Tim Stevens is here to talk about the tech of Tesla's autopilot. Becky Worley talks about the darker side of being a billionaire. And Myke Hurley is here to talk stickers. All that and a whole lot more fun coming right up on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1547, recorded Friday, July 1st, 2016. This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Zerto, virtual replication and disaster recovery technology that gives you the confidence to keep your business moving forward no matter what comes your way. Zerto empowers you to protect and recover your IT assets, move to the cloud, and know you're ready for anything. Get a free readiness assessment for your data center at confidencecio.com. And by Atlassian. Unleash your team's potential with collaborative software tools like HipChat and Jira, which will enable you to work and communicate better together. Visit Atlassian.com to learn more. And by ZipRecruiter. Are you hiring? With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to 100-plus job sites, including social networks, all with a single click. Screen, rate, and hire the right candidates fast. Try ZipRecruiter with a free 4-day trial now at ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. Welcome to Tech News Today, the show where we talk about some of the biggest tech news stories of the day with people who are passionate about technology. I'm Megan Morrone. Jason Howell is out until Tuesday, but my guest today is Becky Worley from Good Morning America. Welcome, Becky.
Glad to be with you, Megan. Lots of good stories to dig into on a Friday afternoon. Excited to talk tech with you.
I am too, and one of your stories involves Hawaii, so I'm super excited about that as well.
Aloha, dude. We'll be totally getting to the bottom of this Mark Zuckerberg wall story. I don't know why I went Valley Girl instead of talking pigeon to you there, but let me try that again. Hey, bro, Mark Zuckerberg is making stink with his neighbors on Kauai. We're going to dig in and get the real scoops, okay?
Perfect. Thank you. All right, well, let's get to our top story. The U.S. National Highway Transportation Safety Administration has opened an investigation into the first fatal crash involving a Tesla in autopilot mode. Joining us to talk about what this means is Tim Stevens from CNET's Roadshow. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you for having me.
So you write that Tesla has confirmed that the crash took place when a tractor-trailer drove across a highway ahead of a car. What else do we know about the accident?
Yeah, we know a fair bit, but there's been a lot of speculation going around today, which has been pretty disappointing to see. But from what we can tell, the tractor trailer did violate basically the right of way of the Tesla. The gentleman who was killed, Joshua Brown, was driving in his Tesla with autopilot engaged. Neither he nor the autopilot system or the Tesla auto braking system saw this tractor trailer pull across in front of the car. And so, unfortunately, there was a collision at very high speed. The Model S actually went underneath the trailer because it was elevated, which effectively ripped the top of the car off, unfortunately, and that killed him pretty much instantly, which is pretty tragic to say the least. There's been, of course, a lot of inquiry about whether or not the Tesla system is at fault. But we have to remember that this is basically an assistant system. It's not an autonomous driving system. So, Tesla always says that this is basically helping you out. It's not something that's meant for you to take your hands off the wheel by any means or not pay attention. And so ultimately, it's unfortunate that the system didn't detect the trailer, but ultimately also Mr. Brown himself didn't detect the trailer, which is also very unfortunate. So it's a combination of factors. And again, there was a statement that charges are pending against the driver of the tractor trailer for, again, indeed turning across Joshua Brown's path.
Well, this is one of those things that we fully expected to happen eventually, that there would be this back and forth about whose fault it was, and that was going to be complicated. And already you hear that, like you said, I mean, there was the driver of the tractor trailer said the driver was watching a movie while he was, in the car. But then, I also read that all they did was find a portable DVD in the car, DVD player, which lots of us have in the car. That doesn't mean we're watching movies.
Yeah.
You say you're disappointed. Can you talk a little bit more about that, about the discussion that's been going on?
Right. The driver of the tractor trailer, as you mentioned, said that he thought that Joshua Brown was watching a Harry Potter movie, but as it turns out, he actually didn't see any movie. He only heard a movie. And actually, Joshua Brown had posted videos online basically giving demonstrations of his Tesla. And in the background of all of those, you can hear audiobooks playing. And I don't know that somebody on the outside would really be able to tell the difference between an audiobook playing and someone watching a movie. So I think that's the driver. Obviously the tractor trailer driver is going to want to place the blame on somebody else. So it's pretty easy to see how he might make the conclusion that he was watching a movie, but at no point does the tractor-trailer driver say that he actually saw this movie playing. But yet, if you follow the evolution of headlines through the course of the day since that report came out, it started off as saying him hearing the movie, and now I've just seen reports saying that Joshua Brown was watching a movie, despite the fact that there's been no new evidence discovered to state that. So it's been pretty disappointing to see basically the conclusions that people are jumping to without having any new information. But as you mentioned, there was a portable DVD player found in the car. But there's no reason to believe that wasn't in the back for child entertainment, that kind of thing. And in an incident like this, something that was in the back seat could very well wind up in the front seat. It's simply too early to know whether or not Joshua Brown was paying attention, whether or not he had his hands on the wheel, or indeed what he was doing when this incident occurred. It's been pretty disappointing to me to see all the conclusions that a lot of outlets have been jumping to.
Tim, quick question about the how pervasive this type of assistance is. What is the Tesla capable of doing in terms of driver assistance, and how does that compare to any of the other driver assistance systems that are on the road?
So autopilot is a very broad and unfortunately a pretty optimistic term for a series of systems that are ADAS systems, basically advanced driver assistance systems. So the main thing that it will do is adjust speed on the highway. So if it detects a car ahead of you, it'll slow down. It will slow down for speed limits as well. And it will turn itself around corners in very limited situations. But the car is always looking to make sure that you have your hands on the wheel. And if you take your hands off the wheel for too long, it'll prompt you to put your hands back on the wheel. Again, to remind you that this is an assistance system. It's not an autonomous system. It's doing this by a series of cameras that are mounted behind the rearview mirror. There's also a simple radar scanner that's built into the front bumper of the car. And that's basically all that it has at this point. So it's a very limited vision system compared to something like the Google autonomous car, which has LiDAR scanners and radar scanners and a lot of more advanced sensors built in. So because of that, its sensing abilities are a little bit limited in that regard. And that's why it didn't see this trailer, which is unfortunate. But again, this is meant to be an assistance system. So we are seeing other cars that have similar systems. The new Mercedes-Benz E-Class, for example, which is also available now, has very similar technology that'll drive on the highway. It'll steer itself, do the same basic things. And Volvo also has technology coming very soon to its cars. So Tesla's been a little bit in the lead right there, but we've got other cars coming very soon that will have similar functionality too.
And of course, Google has their own self-driving car, and they've been putting miles upon miles on it with
Right.
test drivers and people that people that work for them or people that they've hired to do this. Whereas Tesla is sort of, they're using the people that buy Teslas as their test subjects a little bit. But what do you think about those two ways they're going at this self-driving car technology?
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit worrying. I think the notion that there's a safety feature in the car that's labeled as a beta, and I think that's what a lot of people are reacting very negatively to. I think as you mentioned earlier, we've all believed that it's kind of inevitable that there's going to be a car crash involving this kind of system that will lead to a fatality, and indeed it has finally come, unfortunately. But I think the nature that people are relying on a feature that's called a beta, I think that's the problem, and the fact that Tesla's calling this autopilot, I think, is also a bit of a problem. It should be simply an assistance system, not the idea that this car is actually driving itself. But again, Tesla goes way out of its way every time you enable the system to warn you that this is not something that you can basically set and forget. You need to continue to pay attention. And even if it is a beta system, you should always be ready to take over. And I think that's what's been missing in a lot of the discussions about this unfortunate incident.
There have been some statistics that have come out, Tim, about the safety of driving with these assistive technologies. And I know that one of those that came out is that 130 million miles have been covered by owners using autopilot in Models S and Models X. And this is the first fatality. And then folks comparing that to NHTSA data that shows that 94 million miles, every 94 million miles, there's a fatality with the rest of the cars on the road.
Right.
Do you think that that's a good comparison? And kind of a follow-up question to that, where do other assistive technologies that have been on the road a long time fit in here, like cruise control? Does that affect fatalities in terms of overall mileage?
I definitely think that that's a very important thing to keep in mind as we're having these discussions as well. We'll never know how many lives autopilot has saved already, and I have to imagine that it probably has saved a few. In fact, Joshua Brown himself has posted a video on YouTube in which autopilot actually avoided a collision when someone changed into his lane. It's not known whether or not that collision would have occurred without the autopilot system, but certainly there have been plenty of cases where that autopilot has intervened and saved accidents from happening. So I think that's going to be the big thing. These systems, as they become more advanced, are going to save lives. But when they save a life, it's not really going to get as much publicity as when, unfortunately, these systems fail to save a life. And that's what we've seen here. We definitely seen reports from NHTSA and from others that show that systems like autonomous braking and emergency braking and adaptive cruise control are saving lives and are actually drastically reducing the rate of forward collisions, which are very, very dangerous, of course, because they tend to be fairly high speed. So those systems are absolutely working and they're helping, but ultimately they're not bulletproof yet. And particularly when we're talking about autopilot, it's not 100%. So you still got to be paying attention, but they are saving lives. And I think that's an important thing to remember.
I know that I have that in my Honda, in the minivan. It has the warning for a car that's come to an abrupt stop in front of me, and that technology is more pervasive than the particular situation in this accident where the truck turned across the path of the Tesla. And it seems to me like part of this is exactly as you mentioned, that there's a misconception about the overall technology, that it's a sort of a panacea and will be autonomous instead of assistive. How does that I know that the rear collision warning and rear collision taking over the braking, how long has that been on the road? Is that pretty advanced? I mean, I don't need the specifics, but what's your perception of that compared to autonomous driving?
Those systems have been available for probably almost a decade now, maybe even a little bit more, but they're only now starting to bubble down into the more attainable cars for the average consumer. And that's really encouraging to see. Definitely studies show that those are very, very effective in reducing collisions and saving a lot of lives. Even more, more important even than passive safety systems like more advanced roll cages and things like that. So it's great to see those spreading out into more and more cars. And I think that's going to continue to expand, which is great. But the next step is trying to avoid some of these more rare, but ultimately more dangerous crashes as well, like the one that we saw here when, someone cuts across and violates your right of way effectively. This is a very difficult collision to prevent because you need to be looking on a very wide scale. That tractor trailer came in from the side. It wasn't something that the system had identified. It wasn't being tracked because it simply wasn't within the field of view of the camera. You need to have very long range scanners, very wide scanners in order to detect something like this. And again, that's why we see those laser scanners sitting on the top of the Google car and Ford's concept autonomous cars and the other autonomous cars, because they're scanning in 360 degrees. And that's really what you need to be doing to have a fully autonomous car that can really fully drive itself. And since we're not there yet, again, it's up to the driver to be paying attention, to be looking at the size of the roads and for other things that are going to be jumping into your right of way. And, we don't know, again, whether Joshua Brown was paying attention. Hopefully he was. But ultimately, you've got to be looking, got to keep your head on the swivel, as naval aviators say, to be looking for threats in all directions. And unfortunately, that didn't happen either by the system or by the driver in this case.
Well, Tim Stevens is editor-in-chief at CNET Roadshow and editor-at-large for CNET. He is Tim_Stevens on Twitter. Thank you so much for joining us, Tim.
Thank you both.
Take care. Well, moving on, Facebook shared some news today on their bot platform for Messenger. They're hoping to simplify some of its poorly received chat bots by offering quick replies, for one. In other words, they're limiting the ways you can confuse these stupid bots by letting you respond with buttons instead of confusing text. Becky, I don't know if you've played around with any of these Messenger bots, but I have just found them to be worse than useless. How about you?
Which ones have you used? I'm curious.
The weather bot, that's a cat who has a name I can't remember. I used the TechCrunch bot. Today, I even used the TechCrunch bot, hoping it was improved, and asked for today's news, and it gave me tech news from June 4th. It also said it would reply in just under an hour, which
super.
For a while now, we've been able to get tech news a lot faster than that. So I've also used the Assist bot. I don't know if you've tried that. That's one that, you can order flowers or book a room. It's never quite exactly what I need, and it's rather slow.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried the 1-800-Flowers bot, which I found more, given the castigation of bots that I'd read about and some of those that I'd sort of seen demos of, I was actually pretty impressed with the 1-800-Flowers bot. And here's the reason is that it brought about scaffolding. And what I mean by that is that it provided real-time responsive options for me, almost like a decision tree with multiple options, and told me which way to go through it. And I thought that was pretty well thought out. But big issue. Are we really going to use Messenger and the chat format for these types of queries and utility requests? Now, some of the data shows that millennials are much more comfortable using chat apps to do these types of tasks. So it may be just that the kids nowadays are going to do it and us oldies aren't going to do it, and we don't like it. But I also see this from a UI perspective, which is you want the thing you want to do to be in the place you think it should be, meaning it's Mother's Day. I need to order flowers for my mom. My first thought isn't, let me fire up Messenger. My first thought is, let me go online and find a florist. It's counterintuitive that you would be doing these things through Messenger, but that might just be that we're at early days and that millennials will drive this type of utility through chat apps. And it's interesting because I think there's actually a real parallel to what you were saying, Megan, in the conversation about autonomous driving, which is, as things roll out in beta and we're trying them out and finding flaws and finding them to not be as useful as we think they will, it's like I'll try it once and then I'm never going back kind of a problem. Is this the kind of thing that you want to roll out in a mediocre form and have people get a sort of a bad taste in their mouth? Or do you want to really get this locked and loaded before you make it public?
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard to say how public they've made it. This is for people like us who are constantly looking at the tech news and like, oh, look, they announced 11,000 bots. I'm going to go check them out. I doubt like the normals in our life are also talking about that today. But yeah, I agree with you. I think back to your point about being in Messenger, I think Facebook hopes that we're always in Messenger. And I can see a situation if I at any point use only Messenger for messaging. Right now I don't. Like I have people that I use iMessage with. I have people that I DM on Twitter. I have email and phone. And so I'm everywhere. But I think this is what Facebook wants us all to just be constantly in Messenger. You've had those moments where you're spending 45 minutes just kind of responding to all your messages and ticking things off all your to-do list. And then maybe you're like, oh, flowers. And then you only have to click the back button to, and then 1-800, there's your 1-800-Flowers bot. I could see that, because sometimes having to go to a whole different app somewhere else is, just you forget on the way that you wanted to use 1-800-Flowers. So I could see that. But yeah, I think we're not there yet. Early days for sure.
No, and I think that, it's the way that I think about it, it's either technology in a lot of senses is driven by commerce and porn. And so in this instance, we got to look at how commerce is going to drive bots. I can see that as, they're willing to make that outlay and see if this will work. But there are a lot of technologies, beacon technology, sending people coupons via Bluetooth beacons in stores. That's another one where they tried to roll that out 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. It just wasn't there. And they did it so badly and annoyed people so much that they've gone underground. And now, 4 or 5 years later, they're trying to roll this technology out again. But people are wary because they blew it so badly the first time. So I'm not sure that this is where we're going, although certainly chatbots and bots in general are so hot right now as they're the manifestation of artificial intelligence that's actually hitting our screens in real time.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to Google porn bot, but I'm not going to because that would mess with my Google searches. But I think that's probably what it's being used for some people. I mean, we all saw Her, so it's true. Porn does move technology in many ways. We've all videotapes, Snapchat. It's all where it all starts. So maybe if someone else wants to Google porn bot, they can explain to me how that is working now. So
that'll be the next Twit late night show, This Week in Porn Tech.
Yeah.
You and I will not be hosting.
No, we will not, hopefully.
Or Padre.
Probably not. Oh, no. Okay, moving on. If you work on the floor of the U.S. Senate, you're going to have to give up your BlackBerry, finally, for your own good. According to a memo to staffers, Congress will no longer be able to request new BlackBerry devices. Instead, they'll be forced to upgrade to Samsung Galaxy S6s on Android or the 16-gigabyte iPhone SE. Not the best choices. If people have BlackBerries, they can still keep them. And they did say they have like a handful, like 100 of, the classic BlackBerry RIM devices and maybe 40 left of different devices that you can keep those. If you need the RIM classic AT&T BlackBerry, there's 45 left. If you work on the Senate floor, get yours now. But yeah, this is, I think it's about time for them to move on.
Well, it's so funny, East Coast, West Coast, it's not just rapper wars. It's definitely the BlackBerry wars were so prevalent for a long time. Every time I'd go back to New York, all my producers would be, madly thumb typing and refusing to give up their BlackBerries, whereas we in the West were like, iOS and Android for the win. But, I didn't realize what a stronghold DC was. And obviously it's security and privacy and just that this is such an email-based culture. The political sphere is. And so I didn't realize how this is the last bastion of RIM culture. And it's amazing to see how far they've fallen, how fast. And I guess maybe not that fast because I'm actually surprised that there's even some hangers on.
Yeah, I mean, when I have some friends that work in and around the White House, and yeah, they have just recently given up their BlackBerries to use iPhones. I mean, it's part of the whole culture and the infrastructure, and they move so slowly. I think just in June, Obama had to finally give up his BlackBerry. And I saw him, I think it was on one of the late night shows, joking about it, just saying, when he got into office, like he was the coolest president because he was the first one with a BlackBerry. And it just shows how how far we've come. But yeah, they gave him a replacement phone that wasn't even really a phone at all. He says it doesn't do anything. It's like a 3-year-old's phone. You can't put music on it. You can't, do anything with it. So.
I remember that iconic picture of Hillary texting on the plane with her BlackBerry. Boy, that's come full circle with the email servers and all that. So yeah, rip BlackBerry. Even politicians have given you up. That's when you know you're really dead.
It's sad. Well, the Apple Spotify public PR fight that we talked about yesterday continues today. In case you're not keeping up, yesterday Spotify accused Apple of using its App Store requirements as a weapon against them. And we're not always huge supporters of the way Apple runs its subscription service and its App Store, but we thought it was a little disingenuous of Spotify since they knew very well that Apple would deny their app as it was. And today Apple fought back publicly with their lawyers, writing letters to Spotify's lawyers claiming that Apple was demanding preferential treatment, that Spotify was demanding preferential treatment, not Apple. Spotify had been purposely vague about why they were denied, and Apple said they appreciated the opportunity to set the record straight. Spotify violated Rule 3.1.1 of Apple's App Store review guidelines, which states that apps may not provide external links or other text that invites users to subscribe to services through sites rather than Apple's own in-app purchase system. I am tired of hearing them publicly fight. I prefer Pandora. What about you, Becky?
You're opting out of the whole thing. Yeah, this is such a broader issue. I mean, let's start with Spotify has less money than Apple. And so they can't really take this to the courts because Apple will outgun them legally and they probably can't win. Spotify probably can't win. So what they're doing is using the court of public opinion, and they're making these noises that say, hey, this looks like anti-competitive behavior. EU, are you listening? Take your mind off Brexit for 10 seconds and please come after Apple because they're eating our lunch. And so I see what Spotify's trying to do here in terms of they're tactically making the best move they can to compete against Apple. And this is really an ecosystem and a sub-ecosystem war. So Apple wants you from the minute you wake up to the second you go to bed, and then they want to track your sleep at night. They want you living in iOS world. Obviously, Google wants you to live in Google world. Amazon wants you to live in Amazon world. But then we have this sub-ecosystem of music services, streaming services, and this probably predates in a way this concept of the larger ecosystems of sort of the big three, Google, Apple, and Amazon. And so these little sub-ecosystems of in this instance, streaming music services, Pandora, Spotify, and now Apple Music, Google Play to some extent, Amazon's Prime Music. They're all fighting in this space, and they're really struggling to compete against the might of the larger Apple ecosystem. And I don't know what the future of this is. It's looking murky for these little guys trying to compete in the big pool.
It really is. I mean, because like you said, Apple has a lot more money than Spotify or anyone, but Spotify has more paying users right now. So, they really want to keep that, and it's difficult because all they are is Spotify. Well, Apple is an entire ecosystem. And, it's hard to say, I think. I mean, I do subscribe to Apple Music. I like it fine. Like I said, I'm just an old Pandora fan, so I never used Spotify. And it's hard to say if it is really empirically better than what Apple Music could be. But it certainly is right now, and people have buy-in because they've used it for so long, and they like it. A lot of people. I mean, so I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Those changes between these services are so painful. If you're invested in Spotify and have your playlists and have all of your devices all working with Spotify, it really is an investment of so much time to change over to another service. Spotify has 30 million members right now, but the big rumor that came out today, leaked to the Wall Street Journal, is that Apple may be making a play to buy Jay-Z's Tidal streaming music service. And if they did that, Apple Music plus Tidal would have about 20 million subscribers, which would really give them a lot more weight. And that rumor is so interesting. There's a great article up on The Verge about it, and they talk about the pros and cons of why it may happen. The pros are really about the money. Basically, Tidal's not cutting it in a way. Their big plays were better music quality. Surprise, nobody gives a rip. Second one was exclusive music debuts. Well, over on Apple Music, Jay-Z himself has his own debut exclusive on Apple Music right now. So clearly that's not working so well. And if Apple did buy Tidal, Jay-Z's original idea was that artists would get a larger cut of the streaming music service since they were really losing money over streaming, and Tidal was supposed to solve that. Well, it's not exactly working out like that if you don't have critical mass to begin with. And so at least if he sold to Apple, the 20 musician investors who are big names that are invested in Tidal, at least they would get a big check from Apple. And that may, short-term appease them in that way, but it does nothing for the up-and-coming artists.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Well, after the break, Myke Hurley from Relay FM is here to help us bring some bling to our devices. But first, let's take a minute to thank Zerto, the sponsor of this episode. Zerto is IT asset protection, disaster recovery, and cloud continuity for confident CIOs. Confidence can make or break businesses in today's IT world. It can mean the difference between hesitation and action, success or irrelevance. Zerto's cloud-based business continuity solutions arm today's CIOs and IT pros with the confidence to know their systems are ready for anything. With Zerto, you can recover from downtime, test new technology, and move to the cloud in a matter of clicks while maintaining business continuity. Zerto's virtual replication technology gives you the power to simplify your migration, switch to new infrastructure faster, and get quicker ROI. Know your data is protected by breakthrough hypervisor-based software that puts the power of continuous replication at your fingertips. Migrate to the cloud with no disruptions with enterprise-class software that empowers you to seamlessly and safely move workloads between public, private, and hybrid clouds. Get complete, comprehensive data protection in one smart solution for BCDR across storage and hypervisors. Recover from any disruption with checkpoints every few seconds. Protect and recover files, VMs, and applications from any point in time. See for yourself how Zerto simplifies your data replication and disaster recovery. Plus, get a free readiness assessment for your data center at confidentcio.com. That's confidentcio.com, and we thank Zerto for their support. I have been criticized about my lack of flair on my laptop here, so I thought it was time to call in an expert. Welcome Myke Hurley, podcaster and co-founder of Relay FM. Hi, Myke.
Hi, Megan. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for staying up late. Sorry we're calling you so late. I know you're across the pond, so we appreciate it.
It's fine. I was watching the show, and You can never be upset at Tim. Nicest guy on the internet.
That's true. I was also thinking about you waiting while you're the real Apple expert. Do you want to weigh, before we get into Bling, do you want to weigh in on the Spotify, Apple Music, public spat?
Yeah, I think this is really interesting because it's seeing how far Spotify have pushed Apple that they're now willing to talk out about it. Like, Spotify's been breaking Apple's rules for a long time, trying to convince people to sign up on outside of the app, right, which is against Apple's subscription rules for people that are using their services. And it seems that maybe Apple have had enough of them. They're kind of holding their application hostage right now. I think this is going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. I don't really think that it's got anything to do with the fact that Apple has a music service now. I think just Spotify are able to use this excuse to their advantage. But this is going to be an interesting one to see over the next few days how it plays out. But it's a tricky situation. But I think it seems like at least Apple have kind of had enough of Spotify trying their luck.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not a new policy in the App Store. It's always been there. So, yeah.
No. I mean, I think from my understanding, the update that they have in the store has pulled the Apple subscription method out of the application, which has led Apple down this path. But we'll see.
All right. Well, some people feel it's an abomination to put stickers on your well-designed products, but you do not feel that way.
No, and I do hear from all of those people who think that it is an abomination every time I talk about it. So I'm excited to hear the feedback that comes my way today. I figured, considering this is a video show, this is my 9.7-inch iPad Pro, one of the few devices that I have which is covered in stickers.
And you have a crayon attached to it looks like, too.
Yeah, this is my Apple Pencil. It's a Crayola crayon. And I have another iPad, which is also covered in stickers, and a MacBook too. And I know why this upsets people. I think it upsets people because they feel that the design of these devices has a certain purity to them, which I totally understand. One of the reasons that I love Apple products is because that's a picture of my bigger iPad covered in stickers. It has more stickers on it now, actually, than that photo. I understand why it upsets some people because they feel there's a purity in the devices that Johnny Ive has forged from aluminium. But I like to express myself through these stickers. So all of the things that I stick onto my iPad, they have some kind of link or tie to a part of my personality, whether it be something that I enjoy or just something that I want to represent about myself. So these things, they tend to just be these slabs of aluminium in varied colors, and I like to kind of spruce things up a little bit. Stand out from the crowd.
What bumper stickers do you have on your car?
So I don't have a car. Having grown up in London, there is no point in having a car, really. We have the best public transport system in the world.
I do love the tube. And I have to say that, there's so many different reasons to have stickers on your gear. And if you live in a family that's all in the same, as we were talking about, ecosystem, you're going to want to know, is that mine or is that his or is that my partner? You will see here has the exact same MacBook as I do, but you'll be pleased to see.
Look at that.
Look, a little GB sticker right there, Union Jack. So, I think that it's important in terms of identifying your own gear. And I have had that happen at the airport where two people with the same computer are running through and I'm like, oh, that's his. He has that sticker. That's not mine. So it has utility too.
Yeah, I mean, I can go with that. I can say I do it for utility purposes, but I really don't. I just like to express myself. There are many ways that people express themselves. And there are, obviously you can put wallpapers and backgrounds. But when you look at some Android, you get skins and themes and stuff like that. So people can go one step further and completely change the way that their operating system looks, let alone just the hardware. But I think that it just gives a little bit of additional character to the devices that I think sometimes they can lack a little bit. I know that me and Jason Snell on our show Upgrade recently have been talking a lot about how much we would love to see Apple bring colors back to their hardware, like bright, vibrant colors, like the original iMacs or the iPods or the iPod Nanos, that kind of thing, to bring some real kind of color back so people can feel like they're expressing themselves a little bit more. Like I've started buying gold iOS devices, and I'm thinking about getting a rose gold phone with the next iPhone, just so it's different, because I'm kind of a little bit, I've seen these colors and I've seen this finish a lot for many years now, and I want to see something new. So I like to kind of decorate and spruce up my devices.
Do you think the colors are limited because it goes back to that sort of Jobsian approach to limiting the SKUs that are available for each product?
You know, I used to think that was the case, but I think at this point, I think Apple's pretty much got the supply chain stuff down. Especially, you know, you can still buy iPod Touches in a bunch of different colors, and they're adding in more SKUs more and more often now. Like you look at something like the watch, and you can buy that in a bunch of different colors with a bunch of different bands built into the package, as well as looking at the phones now or the iPads now, they're adding more and more products to the overall line. You know, like you look at the iPad Pro, it's another device and then another version of the same size, and then they keep adding different colors of those. They're up to 4 colors. I'm pretty sure at this point Apple could handle some additional colors. Maybe if they even took away gold and rose gold and added in maybe 4 different colors, but bright colors.
Right. Now all we hear is that the space gray is going to be slightly more gray or slightly less gray. I couldn't even stand to read that rumor because I was just like, I don't want gray. I want something. I like my rose gold. I'm a fan of all pink. Not my laptop, but my iPad and iPhone. And not my watch either because I got it too early. But you also stick other things on there besides stickers. I noticed you have like an Apple Pencil holder. Where's that from?
So this is, I am a pen guy. Many people will know that about me. And because of that, I kind of think about the Apple Pencil closer to a pen. So when I was thinking about some stuff to do with it, I made some additional hacks. I also have a little clip on mine as well. So the clip comes from, it's from a Fisher Space Pen is the name of the pen. And this pen loop, it's from a German company called Leuchtturm. So it's incredibly hard to give you this in a way that you could find it online, but it's basically just a pen loop. So it has a stick, like a sticky back on it. So I'm able to just stick it on my devices, and I have one on that iPad, and I have another on my other iPad because I have an Apple Pencil that looks like a HB pencil stuck to my other iPad. But that's just like another thing for me where it's like this adds utility. So now my Apple Pencil is always with my iPad. It's never lost. It's never somewhere it doesn't need to be. It's always stuck to the iPad. And it doesn't harm me so much because I'm already covering my devices and stickers anyway.
How do you think this personalization goes back and forth between the PC culture and the Mac culture? Because it seems so much more pervasive on Macs.
Yeah, I think there might be an element of the creative professional. And I think, you know, like artists and stuff like that, like people that are a bit more expressive have always tended to skew to the Mac anyway, which I think is why there is such an aftermarket of people that do put stickers on their Apple devices. Apple made that ad a few years ago where they devoted an ad to people putting stickers and getting life and use out of their MacBooks. And it's like, you know, if you look at Etsy and just type in MacBook decal, you could spend hours. I have obviously spent hours looking at all of the different options that are available, right? This has been seeping into other members of my household. My girlfriend has a decal of some pine trees on her MacBook now. There are lots and lots of options, and some of them, you know, they're not as garish as my devices. You know, like my devices are tons of little stickers of varying colors, but you can get things that are pretty simple. I mean, one that I think that any Apple device owner who's followed Apple products for years, it should be to get a rainbow decal for the logo. So the 6-color rainbow, I think everyone should just go for that because it's just a nice little addition. And there are tons of those on Etsy for all devices. And I have one on all of mine.
Hopefully the Android and PC users haven't turned off before I say this, but I often think of like people who use Android as opposed to iPhone. A lot of them are hackers, the people that like to mess around with the operating system because they can. I think of them as, you know, like Carla on Silicon Valley, the coder. Like those people I think of having stickers all over their laptop. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily just a Mac thing.
Maybe it's a
No,
culture thing, like a corporate culture thing, because if you're sort of in the tech world and if people in power are wearing hoodies in your office, it's totally okay to have stickers on your Mac, on your laptop, no matter what OS or operating system you're running. But like, if I were to take a laptop with a bunch of stickers on it into the office at ABC in New York, I think they would be concerned that maybe I was having a midlife crisis.
So where's the best place to get stickers, Myke?
So I've recently found a sticker subscription service online, which I like quite a lot, where I get a selection of stickers every month, and that's called Slap to Stick. It's SLAPTA stick.com. And that's like, once you are a sticker connoisseur and you just want to collect more stickers, that's a good one. But if you're just interested in checking stuff out, Sticker Mule is a company that lets you print your own stickers, but they also have a marketplace where they will print stuff on demand. So at Sticker Mule, you can, and that's where I got a bunch of mine. You can just go through and just take a look. They have, I don't know if it's completely legally, they have lots of things that are like Star Wars and Disney. Like, they have tons, as well as a lot of company logos, and a lot of companies put their stuff on there. Are you familiar with the Windows decal? I think it's of is it a cat riding a unicorn or something like that?
I think so. I think I know. It's like the hacker kind of thing. Yeah. It's something riding a something. Let's say cat and a unicorn.
Sticker Mule is where you get that sticker, right? Like, there are lots of companies use them, and I've used them for different stuff in the past that I've had printed, and they're really good. And the marketplace is great because you can just buy single stickers, and you can buy a few and just have them sent to you. I like those. Yeah, there it is, the cat riding the unicorn. So Microsoft have a sticker of that, and you can buy it there.
Mike, what's the most clever sticker you've ever seen?
Oh, I actually had a sticker made of myself, which I quite like. I see if I can put it on the video, and it's that one there. It's me, and the sticker has stickers on it.
So meta.
That was our designer's great idea, which worked really well for me.
Could I buy that at Sticker Mule?
No, actually, not right now. I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
But yeah, and then the pencil skins that I have, the one that looks like a HB pencil came from D-Brand, and the one that looks like a Crayola crayon came from Slick Wraps. So they're also really good for like all over cover vinyls, and they are really good for the pencil covers too.
Well, thank you so much, Myke. Myke Hurley is the co-founder of Relay FM, does a dozen fascinating podcasts. What's the best place to follow all of your work online?
There's so many. If you just want to find our shows at Relay FM, go to relay.fm, and I'm on Twitter. I am at imyke, IMYKE, if you want to follow me there.
Take care. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks so much.
All right. Well, this feedback is good based on what Myke just said about stickers that may or may not be someone else's art. Russell wrote in about, we had a discussion yesterday on teaching kids about image copyright. Russell says, on yesterday's episode, you discussed the topic of inappropriate use of IP. I totally disagree that children don't get it. They know from early on that they shouldn't copy their friends' answers in class and work, don't they? The issue is that the technology allows people to feel that there's safety in numbers and they can get away with it. The attitude of consume everything for free and entitlement needs to be reined in. So I wanted to get your opinion on this, Becky. I feel like sometimes my kids aren't being taught about copyright. They have iPads, they have projects that require getting art, and no one's saying, hey, like you can't, and when they're just doing a school project, they can cut and paste the art and put it in there. But, my daughter was talking about wanting to make something to sell. And she was like, well, I'll just get art from the internet and print it out. And I was like, you can't do that. You can't, and I think it's not something that just comes to people normally. Like, you have to explain to them, how would you feel if you created something and someone just took it and, made money off of it? So I don't know. What do you think?
I definitely think it has to be taught and learned. The concepts of right and wrong are sort of basic, and in the classroom, I think this concept that this listener is mentioning are really articulated about cheating and using your own work. But you have to draw the circle larger to show that really lives in the great wide world. So I think you're totally right. I mean, my daughter was doing a project, and I had to explain to her, you can't copy and paste from a source material into your document. Like that was a totally new concept for her, because she thought she was, I had to explain quoting and sourcing and all that kind of stuff. I mean, she's only in the second grade. So these are all new concepts for them that really need to be explained. And what's so cool is that a lot of this stuff is now what library science is. Library science, which used to be Dewey Decimal System and teaching people how to catalog things properly, is now really expanding out into this type of, I don't know what the right way to put it would be, but it's not teaching technology, it's teaching about information and information science. So that's really a cool thing that they're doing in my kids' school at their library. And I hope that they include this kind of stuff as they progress a little bit more into using computers for all their work.
Well, after the break, it's time to take another thought journey. Today's journey will take us through the dark side of being a billionaire, specifically the billionaire Mark Zuckerberg. But first, let's take a minute to thank Atlassian, the sponsor of this episode. What if I told you that there was a way to eliminate meetings, or at least make them shorter and less painful? You can unleash your team's potential with collaborative software like HipChat and Jira, which will enable you to work and communicate better together. Jira is one of the most popular issue and tracking software systems out there. You can manage tasks for any project, no matter how complex. Confluence helps you create and share content, organize results, and bring team members up to speed. And with HipChat, your team can instant message or video chat from any of their devices. Bitbucket is a powerful way to review and manage code in real time. We love the Atlassian programs. Our engineering team uses Confluence to document equipment and work processes, and they use Jira for managing vendors and organizing tasks. And for everything from planning events to working on serious operational issues, we tie our communications together with HipChat. Visit Atlassian.com and see how Jira, Confluence, HipChat, and Bitbucket give your team everything you need to organize, discuss, and complete shared work. Atlassian, helping teams everywhere team up to create what's next. That's Atlassian.com. Becky, part of what I love about having you on the show is that you like to take tech thought journeys that bring us to all kinds of places we thought we'd never go. Today, you wanted to talk about the downsides of being Mark Zuckerberg. What have you learned about?
Yeah, I got assigned the story that was hot earlier this week about Zuckerberg's purchase of 1,000 acres on the north shore of Kauai. And he's building a wall around the portion that is fronting the highway that goes past the top of his property. It goes from where the big road goes across, coming from the airport, going out to Honolulu, and then his property goes towards the ocean from there. So he's building in places 6 foot high, in other places it tapers down to a 4 foot high wall. And multiple news sources, including the Daily Mail and the Pacific Business Journal, were reporting that neighbors were complaining that the wall inhibited their views and that it inhibited trade winds. And I mean, all kinds of news outlets picked this story up. And so I started making some calls. I read the complaints that people had made to the local paper. And then I called some of my friends on Kauai, one of whom has a place about 5 miles down the road. And she didn't get what the big fuss was and said, it's a standard wall. Everybody in Hawaii puts walls if they have cattle grazing, or, there's a lot of places where in Hawaii, I mean, we've been really lucky that instead of having tons and tons of development like you might in Florida, you have people who will buy large tracts of land, like Oprah bought 2 huge tracts of land on Maui. Michael Dell has a large property on the Big Island. Nick Woodman of GoPro has a large piece of land on Oahu. I don't know how much acreage he has. But what ends up happening is it becomes a form of preservation and not a lot of high density population development. And so most of the people who live there are actually really happy that these billionaires come in and preserve the greenery instead of just creating mega mansion developments for 80 or 90 homes, as this piece of property on Kauai was zoned. So anyways, that's that story. And that was interesting. But in doing the research for that, I ended up speaking with Mark Zuckerberg's personal representatives. He has a different PR team than Facebook does. So his folks were filling me in on some of the reasons why they were building this wall. And I guess I never really thought about the security issues for these billionaires. I know we had spoken on the show previously that in the SEC filings for Facebook, they articulated that the company spends $5 million a year on Mark Zuckerberg's personal security. Now, that also includes private jets. They've spent $16 million over the last 4 years on his security. Then there was also talk, I don't know if you remember this, Megan, that he bought the 4 houses surrounding his house in Palo Alto.
Yes.
And I asked them about that, and they made a really good point. You'll remember back in 2011, he was renting a very modest house in Palo Alto. He was living there with his then girlfriend, now wife, Priscilla. Really very low-key house for a guy who was worth so much money. He bought a house in Palo Alto. It was nice. It's not crazy. And then all of a sudden, this story came out that he bought the 4 houses around him. Well, the backstory is kind of incredible, and I'd never heard this before. The house behind his house that he purchased went up for sale. A guy bought it, and then he had an architect draw up plans to build an 8,000 square foot mega mansion that intentionally placed the living room on the second floor looking directly into Zuckerberg's bedroom, as close to the property line as you could get it. And the person who purchased the lot, who was in escrow on the lot and who had these plans drawn up, went to Mark Zuckerberg and said, "This is what I'm going to do, or you can buy this property at an inflated cost, $1 million or whatever it was more than I paid for it, or I'll build my house. Which do you want?" And so in a way, at least this is the story from Mark Zuckerberg's representatives, he was forced to purchase that home. And then the guy said, "And by the way, I will try and buy all the other houses around you and do this again." And so there he was forced to buy all those houses. Now, he's filed permits for the city, I think it's in Palo Alto or Menlo, I'm not sure, but in Silicon Valley, to tear the houses down that are there and build smaller homes that are guest homes for his family and friends, and try and create a cohesive piece of property here. But that was never his intention from the onset. I mean, I guess I think of him as such a business guy, and you think of Silicon Valley as so low key. Does this kind of surprise you, Megan?
Well, I mean, it's sad because, that's such a weird way to threaten someone. And it's so nefarious, because it's not, it's like bribery. But what I find notable is that that Zuckerberg was criticized a lot, 5 or 10 years ago when Facebook was first getting really big. I guess 3 or 4 years ago when he really took a stand and said everyone has to use their real name. You have to be who you are, and a lot of people who really cared about their privacy, whistleblowers, those kinds of people, just said and they're still saying that there should be room for us who don't want to use some people have their real reasons. And, in the beginning, he was, he was like, well, what, you are who you are. What are you, afraid of? And I think he's matured a lot since then. And, this is a good example of that. He's gotten older. He's realized that there are reasons to be private. He has a child. There are even, more reasons to be private in that sense. So that is what I think is interesting. I feel bad for him, although my father-in-law always says never feel sorry for anybody who owns a boat. So at that level, Zuckerberg could own 1,000 boats, maybe 1 billion boats. Not sure how much a boat
spent
costs.
Millions and millions of dollars to create that privacy. And so maybe in the free market sense, he can afford to create that privacy. Then to play devil's advocate, it's not just a privacy issue for the sake of privacy in this case, because if you think about it, another part of the story that I hadn't considered is that his security team receives regular and credible threats on his safety, his wife, his daughter. Earlier this year, ISIS supporters online threatened Mark Zuckerberg, threatened Jack Dorsey, in part because of the Facebook and Twitter policies to police ISIS accounts through social media. And so, you really think about it, it becomes these CEOs become lightning rods for exactly what you're talking about. And yet at the same time, they've gotten so much bigger than the reality that any one of us could experience in using their products. You know what I mean? It's sort of, it really is a tough thing to weigh up as you look at sort of how the person and the CEO match up in this double standard.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know that company we were planning to start that was going to change the world and make us both cajillionaires? Let's not do that, because that sounds really hard to have to build a wall.
And you know what? I think I like going to bed at a regular time also. So like, I don't want to be a workaholic. I don't want to have, ISIS threats against you and me. And I don't know. I mean, it'd be nice to own 5 homes on one compound, but that is hard. Let's just stay us.
Yeah, exactly. Let's stay us. Well, TNT's fan of the day is Michael Higgin on Twitter, who listens on his Amazon Echo and says it has no problem with an Australian accent. # you little beauty. That's spelled like that. Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup. Post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook. Use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT, and we will find it. After the break, if you think technology is causing the slow death of society, you are not alone. But first, let's take a minute to thank ZipRecruiter, the sponsor of this episode. If you would rather pull out all your fingernails one by one than figure out how to find the best candidates for your open positions at your workplace, it is time to try ZipRecruiter. It's time. If you want to find the perfect hire, you need to post your job on all the top job sites. With ZipRecruiter, you can. Posting jobs in one place isn't enough to find quality candidates. Don't leave it up to chance. With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to more than 100 job boards, including social media networks like Facebook, Twitter, Google+, all with a single click. Just post once and watch your candidates roll into ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use interface. ZipRecruiter offers optimized pages that look great on any screen, and their unique mobile apply process. You can use that for more visitors and more applicants. Find candidates in any city or industry nationwide, so no more juggling emails or calls to your office. You can also add multiple users to your account. Quickly screen candidates with real-world questions using free-form, multiple-choice, or yes-no formats. View candidate responses in conjunction with their beautifully formatted resumes. Rate them and hire the right person fast. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by over 800,000 businesses. That's more than 100 million candidate applications delivered. Right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. That's ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. And we thank ZipRecruiter for their support of Tech News Today.
Megan,
yes.
I'm going to do a little bit of editing here so that you don't get trolled from the land down under. As we were talking about Michael Higgin, you said that his Amazon Echo has no problem with an Australian accident.
Did I say
that was a minor Freudian slip. I don't know how you feel about Australians, but I think you meant an Australian accent.
Did I say accident?
You little beauty.
Thank you.
I can't say that.
Accent.
I mean, I like Aussies personally. I can't speak for you, but I just want to make sure you have a chance to speak up.
Some of my best friends are Australian.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing that out. Whew. Well, you said people don't troll me. I was thinking, what did I say? But that's probably the least of what I said today.
If they're trolling you, you're doing something right, sister.
Exactly. Well, a website called Diseases of Modern Life aims to show that people have been complaining about technology since the Victorian age. Let's take a look at a 1906 cartoon from the website. It was from Punch. That was a satirical British weekly magazine. It shows the development of the new technology as a worrying trend. In case you're listening and not watching, you can see the image at diseasesofmodernlife.org. It shows a prediction for the year 1907. It shows 2 people in polite society looking down at their own personal wireless telegraph machines. The caption reads, "These 2 figures are not communicating with one another. The lady receives an amatory message and the gentleman some racing results." So I thought as we head into this holiday weekend in the U.S. or just the weekend or everywhere else, you can take a look at this site if you need to calm your anxious nervousness about the robot apocalypse. Did you have some time to look at this today, Becky?
Oh, it's so funny and so prescient. I mean, wow, that it's human nature is what we're always fighting. There's always going to be some element of technology that brings out the worst of us, and we kind of indulge in that at first, and then usually it passes, although our obsession with our handheld devices has lasted a little bit longer than I would have predicted. I think it was What was the Neil Stephenson book? Was it Snow Crash that really, you have a tablet, one device to rule them all? And maybe it was Diamond. I can't remember. But one of those, it was just so incredibly articulate about predicting how it really is with us and our devices. I mean, this is one thing I love about summer is putting them down. But I hope that our obsession with devices is sort of a passing phase. I don't know. I always go back to my analogy about Xerox machines. Do you remember what we used to do with Xerox machines when we went into Dad's office after the office was closed and everybody was gone, and you'd whip your drawers down and sit on the Xerox machine and photocopy your butt cheeks? Yeah,
I would not do that.
I did that. I did that all the time. I thought it was the funniest thing ever. But then it kind of passed because the technology was kind of old. So, we engage in our butt Xeroxing, and then it's sort of like, yeah, that passes. So hopefully our baser habits will pass as the technology evolves and we move on. I don't know.
Yeah, I used to shove my face against it, and there's no telling what kind of damage that did to my brain.
I hope you didn't go do that after I did mine.
I know. Where did your dad work? Oh dear. Well, you can take heart in the fact that I think soon we will all be putting our devices down. They'll just be VR headsets, and that's the world we'll be living in. So we won't be holding our devices anymore.
Man, new technology to exploit our baser habits.
Exactly. Like it just comes back full circle to the porn bot. That's where it all starts, right?
There you go.
Also, if you're a parent, you might want to take a look at the Victorian version of parent shaming called the disorder of the spoiled child. Also, that's been around for a long time.
Did it predict Minecraft?
Probably. That was the wireless telegraph machine. That's the Minecraft.
There you have it.
Becky, thank you as always for joining us. You're at Be Worley at Twitter. Is that where we should follow you, or is there some other place where we should go?
Me. I post my work. I post musings. I'm generally there, but I'll be on. I think I'm on the show almost all week next week. I'm doing a fascinating series on the science of athleisure, including bra technology. Oh yeah, we're going there.
I'm very excited. We talked about that a little bit in the pre-show, so looking forward to seeing that on Good Morning America. Thank you so much for joining us.
Have a great weekend, Megan.
You too. The studio is closed on Monday, but Tuesday's guest will be my old friend Drew Curtis from FARC. TNT records live every Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. That's 11 p.m. UTC. At twit.tv/live. You can be part of the show by emailing us at tnt@twit.tv or leave a short voicemail at 260-TNT-SHOW. You can also hit us up on Twitter. We're at Tech News Today TV. Many of you participated in our annual Twit audience survey at the beginning of this year, providing helpful feedback on our programming and advertising practices. Our partner, PodTrack, is currently asking avid podcast fans, including Twit listeners, to chime in and provide anonymous information about the trends and needs of podcast audiences like yourself. If you're interested in participating in PodTrack's audience panel, visit podtrack.com/panel for more information, and find all the ways to subscribe to our show at twit.tv/TNT. And on Twitter, I am at Megan Morrone. Thanks to our technical director, Kara, and thanks to Kevin and Hase for running the words, and all the folks who help us produce this show every single day. And thank you to you for talking tech with us. We will see you Tuesday.
Good job. I heard it.